This is the story of how a government decided that sparrows were the enemy of the people, and how that decision killed more humans than World War I. The year is 1958. The People's Republic of China, Chairman Mao Zedong, launches the Four Pests Campaign. The goal: eliminate rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows from China. The method: mass mobilization. Every citizen is ordered to kill these pests. Quotas are assigned. Success is measured in body counts. For sparrows, the campaign is devastatingly effective. Millions of Chinese citizens bang pots, shoot nests, destroy eggs, and chase birds until they drop from exhaustion. Within months, sparrow populations collapse. The campaign is declared a triumph. The pests are eliminated. Then the locusts arrive. Without sparrows to eat them, insect populations explode. Crops are devoured. Harvests fail. And between 1959 and 1961, approximately 30 million Chinese people starve to death in what becomes known as the Great Chinese Famine, one of the deadliest disasters in human history. By the end of this video, you will understand how central planning creates catastrophic unintended consequences, how ignoring scientific expertise leads to ecological collapse, how good intentions without understanding cause mass death, and why killing sparrows was not just a mistake. It was a lesson in how hubris, ideology, and authoritarian control can turn a war on nature into a war on humanity itself. The People's Republic of China in 1958 is 9 years old. The Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, controls the most populous nation on Earth. Mao is implementing his vision of rapid modernization and socialist transformation. The Great Leap Forward, launched in 1958, is Mao's ambitious plan to transform China from an agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse within years. The goal is to surpass Britain in steel production, to collectivize agriculture, to prove that socialist planning can achieve in a decade what capitalism took centuries to accomplish. The ideology driving the Great Leap Forward is faith in human will over material constraints. Mao believes that with proper organization, motivation, and mass mobilization, China can overcome any obstacle. Nature, economics, expertise, these are secondary to revolutionary determination. This ideological framework sets the stage for the Four Pests Campaign. If human will can industrialize China, it can also control nature. Pests harm agricultural production. Therefore, eliminate the pests. The logic is simple. The consequences will be catastrophic. The Four Pests Campaign identifies 4 creatures as enemies of agricultural production: rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows. The first 3 make sense. Rats eat grain and spread disease. Flies and mosquitoes carry illness. These are genuine pests. But sparrows? The reasoning is that sparrows eat grain from fields. Studies show that each sparrow consumes approximately 4 pounds of grain per year. With hundreds of millions of sparrows in China, that amounts to significant agricultural loss. This analysis is not entirely wrong. Sparrows do eat grain, but it is incomplete. Sparrows also eat insects, massive quantities of insects. They are natural pest control. They keep locust, grasshopper, and caterpillar populations in check. This ecological nuance is ignored. The campaign views sparrows purely as grain thieves. The fact that they also protect crops by eating crop-destroying insects is dismissed or unknown. The policy is based on partial understanding presented as total knowledge. Scientists and ecologists raise concerns. They warn that eliminating sparrows will disrupt the ecosystem. They point out that birds are part of a food chain. They argue that insects, without bird predators, will multiply catastrophically. These warnings are ignored or suppressed. The campaign has ideological momentum. Mao has declared sparrows an enemy. Questioning the campaign is questioning the party. Scientists who object are accused of rightist thinking, of insufficient revolutionary fervor, of prioritizing bourgeois expertise over mass mobilization. This is the fatal dynamic. Ideology overrules expertise. Political correctness trumps scientific accuracy. The campaign proceeds not because it is ecologically sound, but because it is politically mandated. The Four Pests Campaign is implemented through mass mobilization. This is not a professional pest control operation. This is the entire population, hundreds of millions of people, organized to kill pests. For sparrows, the methods are varied and ruthlessly effective. Citizens are organized into teams. Quotas are assigned. Each person, each neighborhood, each work unit must kill a certain number of sparrows. Success is measured. Failure is noted. The killing methods exploit sparrows' biology. Sparrows must land periodically. They cannot fly indefinitely. So the campaign prevents them from landing. Across China, people bang pots and pans. They beat drums. They shout. They wave flags. They create constant noise. When sparrows try to land, people chase them. When they nest, people destroy the nests. When they lay eggs, the eggs are smashed. The sparrows, exhausted and unable to rest, eventually fall from the sky, dead from exhaustion. Citizens collect the bodies. The corpses are counted. Quotas are met. The campaign is working. Schools participate. Children are mobilized to destroy nests and eggs. It becomes a patriotic duty. Killing sparrows is serving the nation. Students who kill the most sparrows receive recognition. Factories and communes compete. Which unit can kill the most pests? This becomes a measure of revolutionary commitment. The campaign creates social pressure. Not participating is suspicious. Everyone must contribute to the war on pests. The scale is staggering. Estimates suggest that within a year, sparrow populations in China declined by over 90%. In some regions, sparrows were effectively extinct. The campaign achieved its stated goal, the elimination of sparrows as a significant pest. The triumph is celebrated. Mao praises the people's revolutionary determination. The campaign is evidence that mass mobilization can overcome any obstacle. Nature itself bends to organized human will, but nature does not bend. Nature rebalances. In 1959, the consequences begin. Insect populations explode. Without sparrows and other birds to eat them, locusts, grasshoppers, caterpillars, and other crop-eating insects multiply unchecked. Locust swarms appear across China. These are not small infestations. These are biblical-scale plagues. Millions of insects descending on fields, devouring crops in hours. Farmers watch helplessly as their harvests are consumed. The insects breed rapidly. Each generation produces more insects. By 1960, some regions report insect populations dozens of times higher than before the sparrow elimination. The pests that sparrows once controlled are now uncontrollable. The agricultural impact is immediate and severe. Crop yields collapse. Rice paddies, wheat fields, vegetable farms, all are devastated by insect damage. The very problem the Pest Campaign was supposed to solve, agricultural loss to pests, becomes catastrophically worse. Ironically, the grain that sparrows ate was trivial compared to the grain that locusts now consume. Sparrows ate approximately 4 pounds of grain per year each, but they also ate insects that would have consumed far more. The net effect of sparrows was positive for agriculture. Eliminating them removed a critical ecological service. By 1960, Chinese agriculture is in crisis, but the sparrow elimination is only one factor. The Great Leap Forward's other policies compound the disaster. Collectivization disrupts traditional farming. Farmers are organized into communes. Local knowledge is discarded in favor of centralized directives. Crops are planted according to ideology rather than climate and soil conditions. Mao promotes absurd agricultural techniques. Close planting, cramming seeds together, is supposed to increase yields. It actually causes plants to compete for nutrients and sunlight, reducing yields. Deep plowing, digging several meters down, is supposed to access deeper soil. It actually brings in fertile subsoil to the surface, destroying topsoil. These ideologically driven techniques fail spectacularly, but admitting failure is politically dangerous. Local officials report inflated harvest numbers to avoid punishment. Provinces claim record yields when in reality, harvests are collapsing. The central government, believing the false reports, increases grain procurement quotas. Communes are forced to surrender grain they do not have. What little food remains is taken to meet quotas. Rural populations are left with nothing. The sparrow elimination exacerbates this. Already reduced harvests are further destroyed by unchecked insect populations. The ecological collapse adds another layer of disaster to an already catastrophic policy failure. By 1959, famine begins. By 1960, it is widespread. By 1961, it is one of the deadliest famines in human history. The Great Chinese Famine kills an estimated 15 to 45 million people. The most commonly cited figure is approximately 30 million deaths. This is more than the total military deaths in World War I. More than the population of many countries, people die from starvation, from malnutrition-related disease, from eating bark, leaves, and dirt when no food remains. Reports describe cannibalism in some regions. People so desperate they consume the dead. The famine is not natural. China experiences poor weather in some regions, but not a national drought or flood that would explain famine on this scale. The famine is policy created. It results from a combination of failed agricultural directives, grain procurement quotas based on false reports, and ecological collapse from pest elimination campaigns. The sparrow elimination is not the sole cause, but it is a significant contributing factor. The insect plagues destroy crops that might have mitigated the famine. The ecological imbalance makes agricultural recovery harder. Most damningly, the sparrow elimination was preventable. Scientists warned this would happen. Ecologists explained that birds control insect populations. But ideology overruled expertise. The campaign proceeded despite scientific objections. In 1960, Mao quietly reverses the sparrow policy. Sparrows are removed from the 4 pest list. Bedbugs are added instead. The government imports sparrows from the Soviet Union to help restore populations. But the reversal comes too late. The ecological damage is done. Sparrow populations take years to recover. Insect plagues continue. The famine continues. Millions are already dead. The reversal is not publicized. There is no official acknowledgement that the Sparrow campaign was a mistake. The party does not admit error. The policy simply changes, without explanation or apology. This is the second tragedy. Not only did the campaign cause catastrophic harm, but the system that created it cannot learn from it. Admitting the sparrow elimination was wrong would require admitting that central planning failed, that ideology was incorrect, that Mao was wrong. Such admissions are politically impossible, so the policy changes quietly. The dead are not acknowledged, the lesson is not learned. The system that created the disaster remains intact. The Great Chinese Famine reveals the dangers of several interconnected factors. Central planning without feedback, ideological override of expertise, and systems that punish honesty. Central planning can work for simple, well-understood systems, but ecosystems are complex. They involve countless interactions, feedback loops, and dependencies that are not immediately obvious. Eliminating one species affects dozens of others in unpredictable ways. The Sparrow campaign assumed a simple cause and effect. Sparrows eat grain, therefore removing sparrows increases grain. But ecosystems are not simple. Sparrows eat grain and insects. Removing sparrows increases insects, which eat more grain than sparrows did. This complexity requires expertise to navigate. Ecologists understand food chains, population dynamics, and ecosystem balance, but the campaign dismissed this expertise. Revolutionary enthusiasm was valued more than scientific knowledge. This is the fatal pattern. When ideology determines truth, reality is ignored until it becomes unavoidable. The sparrows died. The insects multiplied. The crops failed. The people starved. Reality asserted itself, but only after millions were dead. The system also punished honesty. Local officials who reported accurate harvest numbers were accused of insufficient effort. Officials who reported inflated numbers were rewarded. This created incentives for lying. When the central government believes false reports, it makes decisions based on false information. Procurement quotas based on imaginary surpluses starve real populations. The system becomes disconnected from reality because reality is politically unacceptable. The Sparrow campaign embodies this. Scientists who warned about ecological consequences were silenced. Officials who questioned the policy were purged. The campaign proceeded because dissent was impossible, not because the policy was sound. The Great Chinese Famine is not ancient history. It occurred within living memory. Survivors are still alive. The consequences shaped modern China. The famine discredited some of Mao's economic policies, though not Mao himself. The Cultural Revolution would follow in the 1960s, bringing new catastrophes. But the Great Leap Forward's failures, including the Sparrow campaign, created internal party tensions that persist. The famine also demonstrated the limits of state control over nature. You cannot simply command ecosystems to behave differently. You cannot ignore ecological science and expect good outcomes. Nature operates by rules that ideology cannot override. Modern China learned some lessons from the famine. Agricultural policy became more pragmatic. Expertise became more valued. The disasters of the Great Leap Forward made later reforms possible, but the political system that enabled the famine, one-party rule, suppression of dissent, punishment of honest reporting, remained largely intact. The specific policies changed. The structural problems that created them did not. The Sparrow campaign offers lessons beyond China. It reveals how any system that ignores expertise, punishes honesty, and values ideology over evidence can create catastrophe. Consider climate science. Scientists warn about ecological consequences of certain policies. If those warnings are dismissed as ideologically motivated, if economic interests override scientific consensus, if short-term thinking dominates long-term planning, the pattern repeats. Consider pandemic response. Epidemiologists provide guidance based on disease dynamics. If political considerations override public health expertise, if leaders prioritize perception over reality, if systems punish honest assessment, the pattern repeats. Consider agricultural policy globally: industrial farming, monocultures, pesticide use. These have ecological consequences. If we ignore those consequences because they complicate simple economic models, we risk creating new disasters. The Sparrow campaign is not unique. It is a case study in a recurring human failure, the belief that we can ignore complexity, override expertise, and force reality to conform to our desires. We cannot. Nature does not care about ideology. Ecosystems do not respond to revolutionary fervor. Locusts multiply when their predators are killed, regardless of political correctness. The Sparrow campaign also reveals the danger of cascade failures. One bad decision, killing sparrows, triggers a chain reaction. Insect populations explode, crops fail, famine spreads. Each consequence creates new problems that multiply the original error. This is why expertise matters. Ecologists understand these chains. They can predict second-order and third-order effects. But if their expertise is dismissed, the chains proceed unchecked until disaster is unavoidable. The campaign also shows how mobilization without understanding creates harm. Millions of Chinese citizens genuinely believed they were helping their country by killing sparrows. They were patriots performing their duty, but good intentions without knowledge cause harm. The citizens who killed sparrows were not evil. They were misinformed. The system mobilized them toward a goal that seemed reasonable but was ecologically disastrous. This is the danger of mass movements without critical thinking. When everyone is mobilized toward a single goal, when dissent is suppressed, when questioning is treated as disloyalty, mass mobilization becomes mass harm. The Chinese people did not want famine, they wanted agricultural success. But they were organized toward a policy that achieved the opposite. Their efforts, their patriotism, their labor, all were directed toward disaster because the policy was fundamentally flawed. The Sparrow campaign ended officially in 1960, but its consequences lasted years. Sparrow populations took decades to fully recover. Some species never returned to pre-campaign levels. The ecological damage persisted long after the policy changed. Human systems show similar lag effects. The famine killed 30 million people, but it also traumatized survivors, disrupted families, and created demographic effects that lasted generations. The consequences of policy failures extend far beyond the immediate deaths. This is why prevention matters more than response. Once the sparrows were dead, once the locusts multiplied, once the crops failed, reversal was slow and incomplete. The damage could not be simply undone. If the campaign had listened to scientists before implementation, 30 million people might have lived. But the system that created the campaign could not accept that kind of input. It proceeded, and millions died. The final lesson is about accountability. No one was held responsible for the Sparrow campaign. No official was prosecuted for promoting it. No policymaker faced consequences for ignoring scientific warnings. Mao remained in power until his death in 1976. The party remained in control. The system that created the disaster was not reformed. Specific policies changed, but the structural inability to acknowledge error, accept dissent, or hold leaders accountable continued. This lack of accountability means the lesson was not fully learned. The same dynamics that created the Sparrow disaster, ideological override of expertise, suppression of dissent, punishment of honesty, remain possible in systems without accountability. The Great Chinese Famine was one of history's deadliest disasters. The sparrow elimination was a significant contributing factor, and it was entirely preventable. Scientists warned, ecologists explained, experts objected, all were ignored. Ideology trumped evidence, mass mobilization proceeded, and 30 million people starved. The sparrows were innocent. They were simply birds, doing what birds do, eating grain and eating insects. They were not enemies of the people. They were part of an ecosystem that sustained the people. But they were declared enemies. They were eliminated, and the ecosystem collapsed. This is the ultimate irony. The campaign to protect agriculture destroyed agriculture. The war on pests created worse pests. The effort to increase food production caused mass starvation. The road to catastrophe was paved with good intentions, revolutionary fervor, and absolute certainty. Mao believed he was modernizing China. Citizens believed they were serving their country. Officials believed they were implementing good policy. They were all wrong, and 30 million people paid for that error with their lives. The sparrows are back in China now. Their populations have mostly recovered. They eat grain. They eat insects. The ecosystem has rebalanced, but the 30 million dead cannot come back. The famine cannot be undone. The lesson was bought at the highest possible price. China killed all the sparrows, and the sparrows killed back, not through revenge, but through absence. Their elimination created an ecological void that nature filled with locusts. And the locusts ate the crops, and the people starved. This is not a story about birds. This is a story about hubris, about ignoring expertise, about systems that cannot admit error. This is a story about how good intentions without understanding create catastrophe. This is a story about 30 million people who died because someone thought they could outsmart ecology. The Sparrow campaign teaches that nature is not our enemy. It is a complex system we barely understand. When we declare war on nature, we declare war on ourselves. When we eliminate species without understanding their role, we eliminate the services they provide. When we ignore scientists who understand these systems, we ensure our own disasters. 30 million people learned this lesson. They learned it the hardest way possible. They learned it by starving. The question is whether we have learned it too, whether we value expertise, whether we acknowledge complexity, whether we admit error, whether we hold power accountable. Because the sparrows are just one example. The pattern repeats, and every time we ignore ecology, dismiss expertise, and proceed with certainty despite warnings, we risk becoming the next great leap forward. The sparrows died first, but they were not the real victims. The real victims were the 30 million people who starved because someone thought birds were the enemy. Nature does not care about our politics. Ecology does not respond to ideology. And sparrows, it turns out, were not the pests. We were.